Minister, I want to ask you please a question I've already asked of the Minister for Heritage and Arts and a question I've asked of the Minister for Jobs and Enterprise and never really been able to get a full answer. Now I want to preempt the question by saying I fully support the arts industry in this country and the attempt to increase the production of film and to create jobs, but there is a problem with what's known as Section 481 of the Taxes Consolidation Act 1997, and I want to ask you if you will make a statement on the review of that measure and what you think of it, and if we can have proper oversight of it.
Thanks, Deputy Minister.
Thank you. Cahir, look, my understanding is there's a question to Minister Darcy from Deputy McConalogue, which I assume you're not putting because he's not here. Okay, that's fine. Just to answer the question then from Deputy Smith, prior to 2015, film relief took the form of an investor tax relief, which provided an incentive to individual and corporate taxpayers to invest in Irish film production. The relief was granted by way of a deduction from total income of the amount invested for the year of assessment in which the qualifying film investment was made. The Finance Act of 2013 amended the scheme such that rather than providing relief to investors, instead, from the 1st of January 2015, a payable tax credit of 32% is payable directly to a producer company. The tax credit reduces the corporation tax liability of the company in that period. Where the tax credit exceeds the tax due for the qualifying period, the tax credit will be a payable credit. The current scheme is due to expire on the 31st of December 2020. As it's a tax expenditure, Section 481 is subject to the requirements of my department in relation to tax expenditure guidelines. A full analysis and review of that section will be undertaken prior to any announcement on the extension of the relief, and this will be done well in advance of any potential extension beyond 2020. In terms of the operation of that scheme to date, Deputy, and how it has worked, the figures that I have available to me, the most up-to-date figures, are that the provisional number of claimants of the tax credit in 2015 was 1,102, with a cost to the Exchequer of €69.7 million.
Thanks, Minister. I just want to ask really about what oversight there is on this tax break, because surely if the state is to dispense such a generous scheme, and as I say I agree with it, dispensing generous schemes to encourage the arts and the film industry, but shouldn't the state then have some oversight on how the scheme is being administered? I have evidence, and I'm sure other deputies have it as well, because when people come to us, they come to many different parties and different groups to show that there is evidence of abuse of this scheme, and it's quite widespread. And it's abuse of the workers themselves in the way they're used by the film industry. Often very highly trained workers are taken on as trainees on the basis that they're told that there's no other positions available, but they use camera crew, sound men and other types of trained professionals at a very low, cheap rate, and it probably links into the increased use of precarious and illegitimate contracts, bogus contracts that is happening in this country. Employers seem to be finding any scheme possible to undermine workers' rights, and I think this scheme is being used in that abuse.
Thank you, Deputy. Indeed, I have a question from Deputy Richard Boyd-Barrett in a few moments' time about this general issue, and I have some broader figures in relation to the issue that you're referring to that I will be sharing with him and maybe with you too. In relation to the two ways in which the scheme is overseen, it's done both at departmental level and then by the Revenue Commissioner. In relation to the work that happens by the Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht and her department, the scheme can only access this tax relief if they receive a certificate from the Department of Heritage and the Gaeltacht, having regard to the category of the film and the contribution that that film will make either to the film industry in the state or the promotion or expression of Irish culture. So the policy end of it is overseen by the Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. in relation to the concerns that you have on the protection of employees, the Revenue Commissioner now also has to issue a certificate highlighting how the employer has to comply with particular forms of legislation. And the Revenue Commissioner requires that if an organisation or a company receives the Section 481 approval letter, that they're compliant with the law in relation to taxation acts, in relation to capital gains tax acts, in relation to the VAT Consolidation Act of 2010, and then in relation to all social welfare and pension acts. Thanks. So the Revenue Commissioner has to be satisfied that that has been done too.
Deputy?
Yeah, fine, and that all sounds very good, but in actual fact the reality is that in the industry there's tax breaks. I think the figure is 7 million for the last 15 years has been given to the industry. 7 billion, sorry. That's a very generous tax break over those years. And although I don't disagree with it, if it was performing the function that it was set out to do, which is to give training and to nurture a sort of a homegrown talent instead of abusing workers' rights, then absolutely it's the right thing to do. But what we find in reality is that there's a very high degree of abuse of the workers within the industry, and in some cases tax breaks are being given to companies who don't even shoot or film in Ireland, and I don't think that that can be legitimate. So some oversight that's better than what you've described, where the Revenue Commissioner demands certain certificates and certain criteria, and the Arts Minister is supposed to get them to sign a form that says this, that or the other. There is no actual oversight of the administration of it. And like we've seen, and I know you'll be talking to other deputies about it later on, across all industry there's a gross abuse of workers' rights taking place at the moment, and if one industry does it, they're all going to copy because they seem to be able to get away with it.
Deputy Burton on the same topic.